Will, this is one example of where maybe we should suggest there's hope in the world.
You think?
Well, it's although we also found that they got their head cut off in a heartbeat. But nonetheless, we did indeed see some degree of revolt or rebellion, if you wish, saying that this is not what we had in mind.
Well, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's good, especially because, again, we're talking about using artificial intelligence in weapon systems at this point. So, and the Google employees, and I don't think they're alone. I think a number of companies, the engineers, have begun begging their bosses to please realize that this might not be the most appropriate use of the technology at this point. We may need to kind of think about this a little bit before we kind of put these on. So this is an article from Breitbart. Google AI workers call for restrictions on military use following Pentagon Anthropic dispute. Breitbart has put a couple of articles out. They seem almost as worried as I am about the weaponization of artificial intelligence, and that's a good sign to me. So here's kind of the question: do we really want to create killer robots at this point?
Well, I think what we should defer to the designers here is the unpredictability of the outcome. Because I think, as we have seen, certainly just from my own research that I've done over the last year, is we're finding that the capabilities are a little bit more than we originally considered. And then as we look at the autonomous component of AI programming to where it now generates its own code, puts a whole new dimension into this, because these engineers, they're the ones who are able to extrapolate far better than I in terms of what could happen. And we made the comparison before about the Manhattan Project, which, for those of you who aren't students of history, the Manhattan Project was the creation of the atomic bomb that actually started in the early 1940s. And those scientists came to regret the day that they actually did this. And do these designers today actually, are they able to look into the crystal ball and really think, hey, this isn't science fiction anymore, this is something that could happen?
Yeah, and here's kind of where I think about it. They're not saying we shouldn't use AI in terms of helping us with warfare. What they're saying is, and this is kind of what I was saying in a previous episode, is what happens when you remove the human from the loop? When there's no human intervention, that's, to me, the biggest risk. But here's my greater concern, and I think it's wonderful that they kind of said, all right, well, let's, and we're talking about the people who built the brain are afraid of it, so that's a good sign. But here's my concern. It's not necessarily what would happen in the United States if we did this, but if we do it, China does it, the Russians do it, the other countries that would have the capability to do this. This technology is not so restrictive that a rogue state or a terrorist state wouldn't be able to do it as well.
And I want to also look back. We've actually probably alluded to the fact that this would be based on kinetic warfare, and I don't think that's necessarily all we have to worry about. For instance. We're already seeing, I guess, in Iran that they have, and we're in late March 2026, that the internet's been out for quite a while. So for those of you who are watching us online, we would not be there, nor would your news be there, nor would your markets be there. And for all of the parts that we're hoisting up a red flag about, there's a vulnerability to this that we have now realigned ourselves to, where internet connection is getting close to believe being believed as a right even. And if we go to full digitalization, which is what a lot of people propose, where everything is done through your phone, then it becomes it's mandatory. So let's take a look at how warfare actually could take different shapes, because I think that's an important thing to consider too. I mean, we're obviously in this case right now we're dealing with the Iran war, with the United States and Israel on the other side, and we're seeing the first immersion in a certainly AI or drone warfare scenario, which has redefined a lot of the traditional engagements. But I don't think that even touches the potential of what type of engagements we could have with AI, just in terms of interfering with the internet or affecting
Mass disruption.
We have delegated a tremendous amount of regulation of our utilities, power, water, sewer, all done. I was quite surprised. We went through Hurricane Milton, and internet service went out, and then the automatic valving and pumping for the wastewater went away, because that was all part of it, and that's all done with wireless transmission, which
It's wonderful
5G.
when it works.
When it works, and we've ended up now where we've become very, very much dependent upon the technology that's out there, not just for entertainment and not necessarily just in a case of whether or not it's going to be able to guide a missile or a bomb or something like that, but as we secede or give up our agency on a lot of different aspects of our lives to automation, we have to stop to consider what the impact is when that ability to serve that automation stops.
Well, think about the future: driverless cars, drones in the sky with people in them. I know people find that hard to believe. We're probably only 2 years away. I mean, I thought the latest report I heard was there's some of them already flying in Miami. So these things have been in Dubai for probably half a decade now.
And GPS,
Well, I mean, GPS is everything. I mean, most people don't realize our GPS systems are actually controlled, and the oversight falls with the American military. We don't have GPS without the military people working on it. So all of this exists out there. But here's kind of the thing. All right, now follow me here for a second, and it's kind of like the spy in your pocket. We have these phones, and we've become so reliant on them. I'm not talking about Instagram. I'm talking about you can't bank. May not be able to pay for things in some countries. We still, although I think they're trying to get rid of it, cash. We still do cash in the United States, but that's fading quickly. But here's what I notice. If I'm watching YouTube and my wife has looked up something on her phone, somehow the YouTube commercial has that in front of me within minutes. So, we know this is happening, right? We know there's a link between the internet and, I tried to look, and it's, it goes through, apparently, when I did my research, and again, this could be wrong because it came from the internet, but the idea would be that it's actually reading what we're doing on the router of the Wi-Fi in our home, and then that's being sold and put out across all our devices. So it's integrating within my household, and then it's affecting the commercials I see, the marketing that I get. Well, you're not far away from a foreign actor using a very sophisticated AI, and it may not have to be the most sophisticated country, then affecting what's on my news, what I'm seeing in front of me. I mean, it would seem to me you could break into these algorithms and you could put various news stories in front of people that would make them, you want to talk about this is like Big Brother or 1984 on, souped up on steroids kind of thing. Because there was at least some human in the loop on that. But this could be very like send these types of news. And we saw that. I think we've seen this with some of the rabbit holes of the internet already. Well, but imagine an artificial intelligence unit you don't even need the persons anymore.
How about markets? We had a segment on the market. It was one of the longer ones. We did it in 2 parts. Check that out. That was one of our better ones, in my opinion. But the power of AI in terms of making transactions happen, following the orders. That mechanism can control rises and falls. Let's talk about the psychological perspective of it. And we're already seeing this now, and we talked about the fact it was 0.0016% necessary to start to sway the opinion of the conglomerate AI. The thing that you can end up with is the propaganda component as well. I've seen some stuff that actually I've watched on Facebook that I really do believe are, foreign actors now starting to use AI characters.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I have seen this as well.
And basically shooting things out there.
Some of it's pretty good, though.
It is. No, some of it is very good. And just close enough to the truth to where you can't well, that could happen. Plausible deniability, if you wish. But the ability to be able to use AI from a propaganda standpoint, and also to be able to use AI to provide the ability to break into the algorithms to be able to hit the forms that we're familiar with. Now, I would venture to say that because I'm involved in economics, a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing comes to me based on an economic slant. You may get more on educational. For instance.
Let me give you an example. Because we did the show on the fiat currency and everything. I was spending a lot of time on YouTube watching videos on this, and I saw this video start to come, and it's not one I'm subscribed to, but because of the likes, and we hope you like and you'll subscribe here because we're actually real people.
Yep. Still here. Yep.
I would definitely make myself look better if I wasn't. But what I got, and every 8 years or so, I pick up something else to concentrate on. So I did drones and robotics for a while, and for about 8-9 years. I'm still doing that, but I'm approaching retirement, so I've been saying all right, well, what does retirement look like? What should I? Probably too late. What should I have done with that 401k all these years? So after we did our thing, I was looking at that kind of stuff. And right before the current week we're in, and the stock market has basically fallen every single day, was this video of, and I could tell it was AI because no one speaks that perfectly without a So this generated AI thing was speaking, and what it was basically explaining to me again and again was the notion of the stock market's going to fall next week because you're falling below the 200-day rolling average, and there's going to be an automatic sell-off. And it was very clear that this was designed to instill fear into anybody watching this
and to make it happen.
Well, that's kind of my point.
Right.
This is the idea, and I could definitely, in my mind, say, okay, this is probably a foreign actor trying to affect the American economic system while we're in this conflict, and they're making a very plausible arguments, and there's a lot of truth in it, but it's definitely pushing for me or whoever's watching it to take an action based on its recommendation, and it's coming over and over and over again. And it's starting to fill up on my feed more than the stuff I'm actually subscribed to. And I'm like, this is intentional. I mean, I wasn't born yesterday. I know this is intentional.
Well, and I think that when we look at we've talked many times, LLM, large language models, are reactive in nature. I hate to say it, they're modeled after humans for the most part because we are reactive as well. And if we start to see, and the thing about AI is it is pervasive enough to where that AI entity can take different figures as well, different voices, with a same subliminal message to get us to where we lose faith in our market system. And we are a faith-based economic
military
system, or our military,
or our religion, or our name it. It can reprogram. I've been saying for years that I've been a little bit upset about what I've seen in the American education system because we left a philosophy of everybody come, point, counterpoint, develop your own idea, to what became cancel culture and is still still way too prolific on our college campuses, which is this is the right answer, and if you don't believe it, you don't belong here, which is like the worst freedom scourge against freedom ever. But it is predominant. But this is even worse than that.
Well, because what it's not being,
because you can't escape it.
Well, you can't escape it, and it's not judgmental because it's doing it in an advisory capacity. It's kind of like wink, wink. I'm giving you an inside tip here, and if you're smart, you're going to get out of the markets. And I'm going to go back to
which, by the way, historically is the worst thing you could do.
Right, economic destruction can be far more effective than military because you destroy the war making capability. And if everyone takes and decides that it's time to pull up stakes and take everything out, which I don't know, to end up with paper, it makes the markets collapse and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think that when we start to look at the potentials of what AI can do, and we've talked a little bit about the warfare component of it, and now we're touching on a different area. There's great vulnerabilities. Now, when you're looking at individuals here, take a look and say, this in a military perspective, and military doesn't necessarily mean all guns either. I mean, we have a space force now. We already know that commerce with the Coast Guard. But yet, there's even another area which is almost like a propaganda division that no one would have to take ownership to because it's just out there. And while we look at this and say, well, it certainly appears as a nefarious backdrop to a lot of these economic arguments that are coming up. And I mean, the guy, it's brilliantly done.
And economics is what are they? We shut down people's commerce. We shut down people's communication systems. That's part of warfare in the modern era. But I want to go back to something we said in a really early episode, which was you used to use your search engine, whatever one you used, and it would rank things. Mm-hmm. But you'd get thousands, mm-hmm. and you could kind of go through and. Someone like me would look for, okay, is this a legitimate source or is this Joe from his garage? And I would be able to discern what was what.
Right.
And I've seen myself within a year become so reliant on this. Whatever I use Google, so whatever pops up, I use something called Merlin too, which pulls a bunch of them together. But whatever the AI tells me, I'm taking that at face value. Very
usually
quickly.
without a reference.
Well, sometimes I had something to click. And
you have a link, but I mean, if you were gonna take that effort, you could actually X that, and it used to be that it was optional, but now I'm finding the Gemini version, and that would be on Google as well, gives me kind of like an overview, and we've talked about this in some of the other episodes as well. And kind of like pre-digests everything for you and kind of puts it in
convenience. It just makes my productivity better right now.
And
but it could easily be all wrong.
Well, yeah, and
I would take it as gospel.
It's linguistically very, very convincing, just like those videos that you're talking about. And what's happened is the new alternative reality, and I'm not going to say virtual reality because a lot of it is tied fast. But like I found, when I pulled myself up, that, there were some things that it said that were not correct. I wasn't responsible for the polio vaccine.
Sorry, that was probably when I was writing to the editor about
it. It goes out and you really have no way to correct it. And it's taking what its opinion is of all of the things that are.
It is opinionated. That is bizarre.
In terms of that. And
I thought it was bad enough with the news.
But that goes back to right exactly what we're talking about is, okay, the opinion. What is that opinion? How does that opinion get formulated? Who utilizes that opinion? And when you start to, in fact, this was actually just came up in another article I was reading where, it's turning up that there's been some political bias, surprise, and that everybody's becoming aware of it now. Well, when you're looking at if there's a political bias or social bias or even socialist versus capitalism, that if that bias is incorporated very much in a subterfuge, that you don't actually see it coming right out with anybody waving a flag, but just gently pushing us in the direction, the same way we were talking about the economic stuff.
And think about it like this. You had to go to the library and use a card catalog, as did I.
Yes.
We had to go search out this stuff.
Yep.
It made us discern good things from bad things, because even in the library, like I always say, that's where they bury the lies. You had to still kind of like what was valid, what wasn't valid. The internet kind of changed that. No one in the generations following me had to go to the library. The information came, but now the information is digested and rewritten for you in a very
convincing manner
and convenient. Yeah. And let's say 90% of the time it's factually accurate. 10% it's not. That's still a lot of misinformation.
Electronic Cliff's Notes that you can grab, and we actually did a segment on this too, which is whether or not it's ethical to use AI and the internet to do your research. But the bias here, and I think that certainly these scientists, engineers, have been well aware of what the capabilities are, and probably have thought about ways that AI could influence our lives far more.
Well, a lot deeper in it than we are.
Exactly, and they're to the point where they're looking at this, and it's like, I don't really want to have anything to do with this. It's we're going to wash our hands here.
But here's the problem I had with the article, or the problem I have with this in general, is the illusion of control. All right. Now, these engineers wrote, I think there was 100 of them, and then there was another company with some more. They wrote letters to Jeff Dean, the chief scientist, I guess, at the Google AI part, asking him to do everything in his power. All right. When's the last time some scientist ever got anything across to anybody that you can recall?
Yep.
Who we have? Jonas Salk? Was that? Maybe I can go to him. Maybe Einstein? But this poor Jeff Dean, I don't know who he is, but I feel sorry for him.
Well, it was only Jonas Salk or Einstein after their discoveries, not when they were figuring it out. I mean, nobody was, going to take while they were working on the Manhattan Project, and say, well, I'm afraid of what this is going to do.
That hair probably wouldn't go over well unless he was well known, right?
But and you bring up an interesting point there too. Is like, okay,
well, there's Jeff Dean versus billions of dollars of military-industrial complex.
Well, agreed, and we.
Oh, stop! Jeff said. Poor Jeff.
if I read it correctly, and I'm not even going to throw the partisan component into it, because I think the Department of War or the military-industrial complex is bipartisan. They went up and said, "Oh, gee, we don't like what you do, and we would appreciate it if you don't use our stuff for that." Well, they were summarily dismissed. Which means now,
and then Sam Altman and OpenAI came in. Let me put my bottom line in there.
They're out of the mix now. They're out of the discussion, and now the new guy's going to come in. Now, whether or not Sam is going to all of a sudden think maybe he doesn't want to have a part to it either, I don't know. I have
look, and I want to be fair to everybody in this regard. This is tricky. Because you're now in the AI military arms race.
Yes.
And that's great. One of us decides not to do it. That's not going to change the equation. And I know the old saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but I've never put a right and a wrong together and gotten to right either.
You bring up an interesting point, not a particularly comforting one. Yes. 2 guys against AI, and another bright message for everyone. But I think we have to talk about these things. And as you have the opportunity to talk with others, we need to ask our policymakers these kinds of questions. I mean, right now, I understand that the AI oligarchy is probably a great supporter of certainly legislation that's going to make it to where they're less and less regulated.
But who doesn't want to be less regulated?
exactly.
Look, I run a public institution. I want to be less regulated.
And I mean,
I'm not going to hold that against anybody. I'm going to say it's up to people who aren't in whatever particular industry to ask tougher questions. Maybe those people who can't see the forest from the trees aren't asking. Right. And I would include myself in that equation. Some of my best decisions, and you were one of my bosses that was appointed by the public, came when people challenged my perceptions of reality and I'm going to defend them, but I'm going to say, you know what? You need to put pressure on your policymakers. You need to put pressure on the people in charge, because trust me when I tell you, we don't always do it ourselves. Not because it's malicious, because it's human nature to try to get things done and try to be effective. And if I was running the Department of War, I would want to use everything at my disposal to win that war.
Correct.
And maybe it takes someone outside of it to say, hey, is this a good idea or not? This is why I'm always for like an independent board where you bring people together, knowledgeable people who say, wait a minute. It's why I like the Fed. It's annoying to me, right? But I like it because it's independent. It's why I like National Transportation Safety Board, because it's independent and it protects me. All right? When there's something this advanced that could lead to catastrophes unlike anything we've ever seen, it needs that independent body.
And to that, and we've touched upon a little bit of what warfare might look like, in an AI perspective, not necessarily in a kinetic sense, but other opportunity. Maybe it's time. We had international discussions on arms proliferation. Everybody right now is totally shocked because now we're talking everything is on the table in terms of attack as a result of the Iranian response to actions that have happened as a result of the United States.
And it's our job. Israel. It's our job as the United States to start that. You know why? Because the world has seen between Venezuela, Iran, and regardless of what you think of these conflicts, our military ability is so much far surpassed anybody else's. I can guarantee you that both Russia and China have taken 2 steps back and said, I think we might have underestimated these guys. And that gives us the power and kind of the duty to say, before we take this up a notch, we're going to sit down and tell you what we think is right. But if you do it, then you're going to leave us with no choice.
Or the other thing,
we can take the high road. We've done it so many times in history.
Can we start to develop technology as well that can act as a firewall? What is the defensive?
I think we have to.
What is the defensive posture that we have as a nation, for instance?
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify, and we allow the World Wide Web to pretty much provide open access to our markets, but at the same time, there's a vulnerability there. And what ways do we have? I would like to know how I can feel comfortable as I've dug into the capabilities of AI, how we are prepared to defend ourselves. Is it compartmentalized? Have we come up with a way to make it to where we're not exposed and we're not looking at the way of life? I mean, I have to look forward if you want to extrapolate to where AI may take us in 10 years, to where, we're unemployed, we're dependent on the machines, everything has been happening, and then somebody pulls the rug out from under us. Well, what's the fail-safe plan in that case? And I think in terms of like where we are on this discussion, that's probably a good point. I'd like to leave that out there. I know the president's probably not listening to us right now, but all of you together need to start asking these questions. As we're embracing progress, what's the spare tire in the back if we get a flat?
If not the most advanced, freest nation in the world, then who?
Exactly. Great talking to you.
See you soon.